So I think it's hard to compare rules between countries, like and cultures with totally different values or some different values. It might be true that North America, there's less rules regarding what happens in school in terms of dress code or hair color or a language you can use. But I think, you know, rules here still exist, and, largely students follow them. And if they don't, they're punished in one way or another.
Is school in Canada mandatory?
Yes. I think I'm pretty sure kindergarten to grade 12. So that's primary school, generally K to 8, kindergarten to grade 8. And then high school, secondary school, grades 9 to 12 is mandatory. Though the traditional being in school is not necessarily mandatory. There are a number of like homeschool programs, as long as certain subjects are covered, and the student passes the required exams. However, post-secondary, like I think every country, is not mandatory in Canada.
What are the different types of Canadian schooling?
Oh, well, I think I just mentioned, so primary school, and that would be roughly kindergarten to grade 8. And then secondary school or high school, which is generally grades 9 to 12. Though depending on the city or the province you're in, sometimes there's also junior high, which could be grades 6, 7, 8 or 7, 8, 9, in between. And then, of course, post-secondary. However, it's the primary and secondary, so elementary and high school, that are kind of run by the government, whereas post-secondary schooling, university, college, technical school, is optional, paid for by users.
Can you tell us the differences between private school and public school in Canada?
So differences between public and private in Canada. So I think, yeah, there's definitely, publicly government-run schools all across the country, and I would say that's the standard. There are private schools across the country. However, they're not as common as as I know they are in the United States. And really, the private schools, you would, parents would pay more out of pocket to attend. There may be rules regarding, dress code, uniforms, for example, at private schools, though not typically at public schools across the country. But again, the private schools are less common in Canada than compared to the United States. And even the ones that do exist, they may be for a specific, religious group, like a certain type of Christian group or other religion. But yeah, other than that, not a huge degree of difference like you would see in the United States.
Primary languages used in school.
The primary language used in school across most of the country would be English, except Quebec, where the primary language would be French. But even all across the country, even though English is primary language used, there would be French options and many French classes, regardless of what stage you're at in school. And also in Canada, we have, it's called English as an Additional Language, or EAL programs, specifically for new Canadian children. So kids who have just maybe arrived in Canada or newer to Canada, who English isn't their first language.
Do students in Canada get to pick the subjects they want to study? If yes, what grade can you do that?
So yes, especially pretty much I think only secondary school. Now, it's a lot of years ago for me, but for kindergarten to grade 8, we had like a core curriculum, and there weren't options to choose outside of that. However, in high school, so roughly grade 9, but it could start earlier depending on the province, you pick what's known as elective classes. So you still have your core classes you have to take, whether it's, some math, some sciences, English, history. The rest of them would be elective classes, so you could choose between a variety of additional options to earn the credits you need in order to graduate. And a lot of times these are picked if students are thinking of what program in university they're going to go into, or technical college, or what have you. Those programs may require a certain set of electives.
How long are each classes and how many classes per day? And also when is school over?
Well, again, I'll think back to primary school, and I believe elementary school, was it 8:30 a.m.? Maybe 8 a.m. I forget, honestly, to 3:30 p.m. And at those younger ages, you were generally with the same teacher all day, but you maybe gym was with a different teacher. And just my experience. And you would cover different subjects for about an hour each. However, in high school, what was the day? The day was probably similar, maybe a little longer, but 7:45 or 8 it started, and maybe went to 3:45 with an hour lunch. And I think there were 3 classes in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, all about an hour as well. So 5 classes a day.
What do most Canadian kids do after school? Do you guys take extra classes after school?
Classes?
Not activity, classes.
Classes. Well, I mean, it would not typically classes unless it was something separate, paid for extra by the parent. Tutoring, maybe people would do it after school, but however, there are activities after which are associated with both primary education and high school, secondary education, whether it's sports or arts, drama, these types of things. But not more class.
That would be class. More like activity, right?
Yeah, like I'm saying.
Yeah.
Any other classes? So you go to class all day, and you go to class at what? No, I mean, we would just have our classes, and then we would do our homework. And, I would say for most students, there's probably homework to do every single day.
So yeah, speaking of homework, how is the homework here? Is it a lot? Is it like daily?
Yeah, I would say, and especially as you start getting older, there would be more homework to do. And also, I mean, it would be dependent on the student as well. If they're struggling a bit more in one area, they may have to put in extra work in at home or with a tutor. Homework is homework. I didn't like it, but I never really struggled with it.
Do kids bring lunch to school? Is food in school cafeteria free?
Again, this would be very dependent on the particular school, what neighborhood it's in, what province, what city, because I think all options exist. And in my elementary school, primary school, I brought my lunch most days. However, students also had the opportunity to go eat lunch at home if they wanted, whether their house was close enough to walk or ride their bike. Or, we brought our own lunches in. There was no lunch to purchase at my school growing up. However, in high school, same thing. People would bring their lunch. Some people would go home. Some people would, go out for lunch. There were lots of, fast food restaurants around our high school. But in high school, we also had a cafeteria where you could purchase lunches. I should say as well, in Canada, there are schools that do have, I think they're like before and after school programs where sometimes, if parents need to drop their kids off earlier, they need to stay late. Some snacks will be provided as well. And even in areas where maybe income is lower, generally, there may be, like a breakfast program to ensure the students have breakfast before school.
Did you find teachers in Canada strict?
Well, strict how?
I don't know.
Like,
strict.
But what do you mean? Like, I had teachers I didn't like that I thought were like grumpy, but I mean strict. Like, I can give you a comparison. So especially my dad, when he was school age, teachers used to be able to like smack kids, and you would have a lawsuit on your hands now. Like, that doesn't exist anymore. There's no like, there can't be really any sort of aggression in that way. And when I was growing up, even there was none of that. And
so teachers can't hit the student?
No.
Oh.
No, like they could be sued for like physical abuse. Yeah. But in like the 60s, 70s, I think it was outlawed in Canada into the 80s, like when that stopped happening. But yeah.
Is it correct that in Canada you can take driving lessons in school?
Yeah, I know my experience, yes, and across the province. I can't say 100% all across Canada. My understanding is yes, in about grade 10, that even though it's not a specific school class, when you are in grade 10 and you start getting to the age where you can get your learner's license, there is like a class that's extra that you take after school when you're learning how to drive.
What are the obvious school rules that you remember?
Well, so like for us in both, primary school, high school, I don't maybe remember like the exact rules, how they were written, but we didn't have uniforms. There wasn't really a dress code, but things like you can't wear t-shirts that have like swear words or inappropriate things on them, like, I don't know, someone holding a gun on a t-shirt or even weapons on a t-shirt, that kind of thing. Like, you couldn't wear a t-shirt that had like, I don't know, a bunch of knives, or I don't know, just like those types of patterns. Beyond dress, like how to dress appropriately rules, I guess another one, like if you're showing too much skin, so to speak, like it has to be appropriate, like kind of like what you'd wear to work, I suppose. Other rules, I guess, would be about how you interact with not only teachers but other students, things like bullying and violence and talking back. Those are all rules that we're, supposed to follow as students and treat one another with respect. Things like running in the hallways we weren't supposed to do. Swearing, stuff like that. A lot of it was just about, behaving well to one another. Not bullying. I don't know, basically like mental and physical safety rules, so to speak.
So going back to the dress code, so there's no school uniform. Is that across the country? No school uniform?
That I can't say. I am fairly certain that most public government schools are not required to wear uniforms, but I can't say 100%. I don't think so. There might be some. And even on the private school side, even though that's less common in Canada, it would still be 100% dependent on the school's decision. But yeah, I don't believe anywhere in Saskatchewan, unless it's private, has school uniforms. And in university, definitely not. Like, that would be unheard of in North America, to have to wear a uniform at university. And I mean, unless you're like in a technical mechanic school, or for example, where you're just wearing a uniform as a mechanic to keep your clothes clean.
Can students dye their hair and wear makeup to school?
So again, there may be some policies at certain schools that say, no to dyeing hair, though I don't think that's common 100%. Like one of my really good friends still to this day, I think he was in grade 6. He dyed his hair blue and it's just like fine. Like
And grade 6 is how
grade
old?
6, we would have been 11-ish.
Oh,
Yeah. And makeup, definitely like the girls I went to high school with would wear makeup. Elementary school, maybe when you start getting to be like grade 8, like 13-ish, girls would start. I don't know if there's policy against younger kids. I just think culturally, younger girls are not generally wearing makeup anyway until they get older, like teenage years. So, what about ear piercing? What about that one? Is that okay in Thailand?
where I went in Thailand, no.
You couldn't pierce your ears?
Right. Yeah, government school.
Like, even if they were pierced, you had to take them out at school.
Right.
Or you couldn't have them.
I don't remember now that
Yeah.
I could even
Because like that's another
have.
one in Canada, at least in my experience, like you can even like, I mean, some kids, especially girls back of, my age, their parents would get their ear pierced when they're babies.
Mhm.
And they'd always have, or very, very
Yeah.
young. And I mean, even lots of boys I went to school with younger would have, one ear pierced. That was a cool thing in the
Yeah.
90s.
I mean, I remember there was no problem for sure in New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's
well,
probably
New Zealand
similar.
more similar
Like,
to,
no uniform and
yeah. Though,
but there are still some
although
schools that have uniform.
New Zealand's interesting, right? Because I think like in the UK, even if it's not a private school, they wear uniforms more often than North Americans.
Actually,
And
my
New
school,
Zealand might have some of the UK influence.
yeah, because we go by year and up till year 13. I remember I had to wear uniform up till year 11
And then you didn't.
and then 12 and 13. No uniform. Yeah. When students break school rules or don't behave, how do teachers and school handle the situation and deal with the kid? Like, what's the punishment?
Yeah, again, this would probably vary by school, by province, but I mean, you've all probably seen North American TV show where kids have detention, where they have to like stay after school in a room with other kids who did something wrong and do homework or read. But when I went to school, it wasn't, well, I guess there was sort of detention, but often we would like, again, I guess the punishment would be reflective of how big the rule you were breaking. Like if it was more serious, there could be, a suspension from school, for a week or a day suspension. The most serious is expelled, like you're expelled from that school and have to find somewhere else to go. I never experienced anyone I knew have expulsion, but definitely suspensions. But less, if it's just a minor rule, maybe, you may be asked to go to the principal's office, sit there. You may have to, I don't know, help clean something up if you made a mess and were rude about it. Stuff like that, where it's, just making you aware of what the consequences are, basically. And so there's not just one punishment. It would definitely vary based on what occurred. And it would vary school to school as well. So here's kind of a comparison, right? Between like maybe not so serious versus serious. For instance, if you're talking repeatedly in class, you may be asked to just go sit in the hallway for the rest of that period, which a lot of kids just thought that was a great break from class. Or they might be asked to go to the principal's office, but say fighting, especially on school grounds, for example, maybe not every school, the first fight would be an immediate suspension, but definitely like repeat fighting, especially physical fighting or very dangerous verbal bullying. These types of things would lead to suspension. And again, a lot has changed, I think, since I went to school, especially regarding bullying. I think bullying is treated as far more serious now, with more serious maybe punishments compared to, in the 80s and 90s and before that. So,
What is your thought when a young kid says we don't need school rules?
well, I mean, I can understand some aspect of it if, why do we need to wear uniforms? Like, for me, that's one where I'm like, yeah, really, why? Like, what's the point? But to generalize and say, why do we need rules? That one's maybe, I don't really even understand the question. Well, we need rules to create boundaries like we do in every aspect of life. If there aren't rules, like, how do you measure anything? How do you control a scenario that one person feels is okay versus another? So even though you may not agree with every rule, to me, like, that consistency it creates and understanding is helpful. So again, like, yeah, sure, I think a lot of rules are stupid, but they're there, and I mean, rules exist in every country and every part of life. So I don't know. It's kind of, maybe I see the point of the question, but I think generalizing when you don't agree with specific rules is not maybe the best method of questioning and achieving maybe what you're after.
Thank you so much for your participation today. I think this interview is going to be very helpful for Thai parents who are thinking to send their children to study in Canada. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Indie Cup. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to talk about, and I think it's good to know maybe how it works in North America, and we would be very similar to the U.S. and yeah, I hope it's helpful as well, and really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and really let us know what you think about what we shared today. And if you have any questions about the education system in Canada, feel free to drop us a note in the comments. Sadi Cup.
สวัสดีค่ะ
See you next video.